Thank you for the opportunity. I am a citrus farmer and I work with a farmers organization whose single point agenda is prosperity of the farming community, of the farmers, of the individual farmers. I'm trying to discuss here opportunities and constraints to building resilient agriculture systems. And that's the topic I've been asked to speak on. One of the basic things I've been traveling all over the world for the last 3-4 years, and including in my own country. And one of the things that we see happening everywhere is nobody's talking to the farming community. And everybody's deciding for them. And that goes with all countries. And I'll give you an example. Those who decide policy, the officials of the government or the politicians, they think they know best. And that's where basic resilience problem starts. And I'll give an example of my own country. We did a survey of 11,000 farmer families 4 months ago, and we put forward all the farming policies that the government had thought were very good, and they wanted to win the election in India based on those policies. When the farmers were asked what they thought about those policies, the farmers said they're not going to vote for the government because of those policies, what the government was advertising. And as a consequence, the government in power has got wiped out in Delhi. I mean, you must have seen that. And that's basically happened because people in power think they know what farmers want. And I think so that's where the problems arise. So we need to ask farmers what do they want. And farmers will want different things in different areas. Even a distance of, I think so, 200 kilometers, demands will change because local conditions will change. From a farmer's perspective, I think what the small farmer requires to increase his resilience capacity is hand-holding. And I think the most important thing that he requires is extension services. Each farmer needs to be visited on the farm by an extension officer. There are no easy alternatives about it. There are no easy ways about it. Cell phone technology has been propagated as a solution to extension services, and I completely disagree. It can only supplement the extension worker on the ground. It can complement that, it cannot supplement it. So we need those workers, and that's the key for everything. And I'll come back to that because that's the basic theme of my discussion. Even the CGIAR system and the private sector, including all the multinational companies, when you see in what they're investing, they're basically investing in 4, 5, 6 basic crops. And those crops, those small farmers don't need. They're not focusing on other crops. They're not focusing on millets. They're not focusing on other things. And what we need to be focusing on in the CGIAR system and in the private sector is livestock rearing, poultry, fisheries, horticulture. That's the key, I think, that we need to be focusing on. Even when you look at livestock rearing, we need to be investing in something like fodder for animals. You know, how can you grow better fodder for animals? UPL does it, and it's a good thing because they have better varieties. So I think we need to be focusing on livestock rearing, fisheries, and poultry, and horticulture specifically to increase the resilience of the small farmer. Absolute focus, I think, so is required on horticulture crops, and this comes with my experience from India because when an economy starts to expand, food inflation will come from vegetables and from fruits. It is not going to come from cereals. And that's where the problem is. So you could control food inflation and you could give nutrition to that individual family where that family stays. And this generates much more employment also compared to other crops. In Africa, I think homestead farming like it's done in Germany or in Bangladesh, I think so would be a very good example. If farmers could be helped to have small plots of land on which they could grow their daily requirement of vegetables and fruits, I mean especially vegetables, I think so their nutrition angle would be met and we would not have to work on other aspects of food aid which I'm coming to. Different models will work at different places. Farmers who are desperate for food will require different steps. Farmers who have surplus produce will require markets. So there are no steps for resilience that we could form in this conference here which could say this is what the farmers require. I think so, like it was said, that the solutions have to be local and they have to come from within the regions. And we also come to technology, because a lot has been said about technology, a lot has been said about seeds. I think so, making technology available to that smallholder farmer, we cannot give him the latest technology, because latest technology normally requires more financing. It requires higher financial inputs. And we are talking about resilience. So if you're buying seeds which are more expensive, you're buying fertilizers which are more expensive, and all of a sudden there's no rainfall, where does the resilience go? It turns absolutely on its head. So you got to be very careful on what kind of technology, you are giving to that farmer. And that also needs to be thought about, because all the technologies, like it is said, is not coming from the African mainland. All the research is coming from elsewhere, and that's a key problem also. What I'm trying to say is that if you need to build resilience, we need that the small farmer who's living in a small hamlet, in a village, in a hut somewhere in Africa, is able to grow his own requirement of fruits and vegetables. If he can do that, you can build resilience. That's what I would say, because then he can weather shocks much better than elsewhere. One controversial topic that's not been discussed about resilience and what are the constraints on building resilience for farmers in Africa is food aid and foreign aid. I'd like to spend some time on it, and because what I think is that food aid, when given from anywhere and within the country itself, food aid could be coming from one region within a country to another region. It could be coming from one country to another country. It could be coming across the oceans. Destroys the market for local produce. It destroys the biodiversity of that place and destroys the resilience of the small farmer. Food aid can be used as a one-stop arrangement for a particular occasion where there might be a calamity, but it cannot be used as a system, because it builds dependence on that food that is coming in. And the countries that are giving food aid are basically subsidizing their own farmers at high cost. And so when we're talking about resilience of the small farmer, we need to focus on this, that the constraints are coming in from countries which are actually giving the aid. You also get something like, now aid comes in forms of, let's say, tractors from Europe to Africa. I've seen it in Mozambique, I've seen it in other countries. You get 100 tractors coming in. There are no drivers who can operate those tractors. There are no mechanics who can operate those tractors. Something goes wrong, the tractor is standing in the shed for 6 months out in the rain, it's spoiled anyway. So that's not building resilience. What the European countries are doing when they give tractors to African countries is they're just giving business to their own companies. It could be in Italy, it could be in Germany, it could be anywhere. And that's actually not helping with resilience. So if anybody is interested, what you need to do is you need to open these workshops where you train. If you want to give 100 tractors, at least train 500 farmers who will be able to operate those tractors, operate mechanics. It has to come as a package. It cannot just come as financial aid to your own countries. And that's what I would say is capacity building, and that's what will help with resilience of small farmers, when you allow them to be able to control their own lives. And same goes with extension workers. We need to build capacity in people by training, by giving them extension services. If Western countries, donor countries, and even African countries want to build capacity, want to build resilience in the small farmer, we need colleges teaching people how to do agriculture. And we need at least, I think so, 4 or 5 colleges. I think rather than I'll take 2 minutes extra. Farmers don't keep quiet easily. We rarely get called. So what I'm saying is, if you want to give aid, you have to set up these colleges. You cannot give financial aid, because I think so this is a guess, because I think less than 25% of that aid reaches that individual farmer. There's so many chains. In fact, if aid is coming into something like, let's say, Somalia or something, it goes through Nigeria. I mean, in Lagos, somebody's sitting there, you have offices, people get paid, and I think so 20% of what is actually being sent reaches the farmer, and that's an optimistic guess I'm saying. So if you want to build resilience, we got to make sure that this aid is coming in terms of capacity building for trainers, and needs to be staffed by people from the donor countries. Initially, at least for the 5-10 years, that's the hand-holding I've been trying to discuss. Even large land grants, even in this country, I think so are counterproductive to resilience of the small farm. At one stage, we are saying in sub-Sahara, nobody has more than 100 hectares of land. And on the other stage, the people coming in from, let's say, even India, and they're coming in from the Arabian countries, and they're taking lands of 100,000 hectares, 200, 500,000 hectares. It's not going to help resilience. That's not the way to go about it. I think so. I've said a lot of things that maybe some people did not want to hear, but this is a farmer's voice. It's not my voice. It is what I've heard, what I've met with people, and all I can say is agriculture gives fastest return as an investment to a nation in eradicating hunger and poverty. Resilient farmers are proud farmers and make a nation strong. There is a very thin line that separates hunger from anger, and that anger leads to migration, it leads to violence, it leads to terrorism. Make farmers prosperous, otherwise there's no turning back. And the only way to go about it is actually talk to farmers. I mean, that's what I would want to say. Thank you so much.